No, I'm glad to talk about the school. I mean, there is some pain involved in it, but there's also some happiness involved in it too, because this comes through the tragic situation of my 20-year-old son, who was going to school in London, Ontario, in Fanshawe, and he was riding his bicycle home from school and was hit by a SUV and killed.
In 2008?
October 1st, 2008. So this horrible tragedy, he was such a strong, intelligent, wonderful young man, so happy and centered. The school for Rita and I and Selena, and it's something good that's come out of this horrible tragedy.
But Sam had been to Guatemala.
3 times Sam had been as a volunteer. And the last time that he had gone to Guatemala with me, I had gotten quite sick while I was there, and for a while I couldn't see, and Sam was 16, I had to actually walk around on the streets in Guatemala holding his shoulder like a blind man. So it was kind of a reversal of roles for us that trip, where he was guiding me around. So he had a very special connection to Guatemala. Another story I'd like to tell about Sam was, Sam and I were there photographing stoves, and I was photographing stoves with probably Jose, and Sam was photographing stoves with another partner of ours, Clara. So he was not with me, but just with Clara, going house to house. And in this one house where they had just photographed the stove, he looked under the kitchen table, and there was this little girl who had a cleft palate. In Spanish, the word for that is labio poderso. And the poor little girl, she's only 5 years old, but she just had a single tooth, and her whole face was really very distorted. She looked a bit like a little monster or something. And she was dressed in rags. The family was sort of ashamed of her, and I think there was 5 or 6 other children in her family. But anyway, Sam took a photograph of this girl, and through that photograph we were able to connect with another charity group in Guatemala, and the girl subsequently got surgery, and now she's a beautiful little girl. So it was sort of through Sam's own initiative that situation changed. So.
And how old was he then? Sorry.
I think he was 16.
Okay. So after the tragedy, you did something that changed a lot of people's lives.
Well, people wanted to donate money after Sam's death, so we created a fund to build this school in the village Panamaquin. We had already built a few stoves in that village, and it was another very poor village, but in a very beautiful location. So we had actually spoke with Claire, and she had suggested that we build the stove at the school there. And so we built a 2-room schoolhouse for the 35 kids that go to school there, before they had to walk to another village to go to school. And since building the school, we've also started a school nutrition program where the kids get a school lunch. And we've built a corn mill in the village. And this coming year, we're building a chicken house. So
with the money from the fund, or with Stove Project money too?
The money to build the school was with the fund from Sam's death. Okay. The school nutrition program, 2 of the teachers, public school teachers from Lanark County, Keith and Phil, raised the money to run the school nutrition program, and they still raise the money to run the school nutrition program, and they're also raising the money to build the chicken house. But the corn mill, the molino, was also with money from the Sam Fund.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And every year I guess in a few years since the school opened, I believe in 2009.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't all that long after.
No,
Happened
I think
fairly
it just
quickly.
took them about 3 or 4 months to build a school.
And you provided the money, and
Mhm.
they did it. They built it. The
Yes.
community built it.
The community built it.
You, I guess then for the last couple of years, you've brought the volunteers back there to see. And when you got out of the van with all of us, you had, I sort of half expected to look over and see maybe you having a tear in your eye or something, but you didn't. You looked amazingly happy. And the first thing you did is pick up a little child and take her in your arms and walk around with her. So when you get there, what do you feel? What's the first thing that you feel?
Well, I feel Sam's presence actually there. There's a picture of Sam that lives in the school, and when we come, they set it up almost like a shrine with some flowers beside it. And now that we've been coming there for a while, we have a reputation, and it feels very special being there. These people are they're very glad to see us too. It's unlike a touristed area. They don't see gringos there other than us, so it's very special.
I heard that, is it your daughter Selena, who actually went there with some friends for...
Last June, for a week they lived there.
And did they help in the school, or are they...
They did, yeah. We worked with the kids, and they also worked a bit, was part of the nutrition program. They have a vegetable garden going, and they worked on that as well.
Okay, so the nutrition program, I guess maybe I could ask Phil about that, but the nutrition program, it involves sending money to buy, I guess, things like beans, but does it also involve helping them learn how to grow vegetables and cook them?
Yeah, it's primarily the money to buy the food for the lunches, but we also built a stove for them to cook the food with,
right.
A little cook house to cook the food, and the vegetable garden. It's had a bad year because with the hurricane it got washed away, so they have to start again from scratch from that one.
Guatemala Stove Project sent money, did it not, to Guatemala to help after the hurricane and the mudslide?
We did send emergency relief money, yeah. We can't send money to build stoves when people don't have any food to cook on the stove.
Right.
So there have been a couple of different emergencies that have hit Guatemala while we've been working there, where we had to switch our direction for a while and just send emergency aid. And all along we have done some emergency aid where when we meet particular children with medical problems. And this year again we met another boy we were able to get surgery performed on again.
This year?
This year, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have pictures upstairs.
But also the wheelchair. I thought you were going to say about the wheelchair.
Well, that as well.
I can rest. When she
Yeah.
said to Rita, I can rest.
Yeah, that took a whole year to materialize that wheelchair.
Why?
Well, there's a charity in Antigua called Transitions, and they get used wheelchairs from the United States. I guess they get shipped to Guatemala, and everybody who works in Transitions are in wheelchairs themselves. Like all the staff are in wheelchairs. And they do the work of rebuilding these wheelchairs, specialized wheelchairs for specialized purposes. So we had asked them for a wheelchair a year ago, but I don't really know why, but nothing seemed to happen for a whole year.
It wasn't the money that was holding it up then, the money that it cost to... I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we gave them $320. The chair is probably worth about $1,000, but, I mean, new, but it was used. But I don't really know. I guess they have a long list of people who need chairs, and I think it just takes someone bugging them. Like everything else in life, you should not, the squeaky wheel gets grease.
But that little boy, who's
Miguel.
12 now, Miguel.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and he has muscular dystrophy or
Cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy. Okay.
Yeah.
So his mother was
His mother, who has
It's
7 other children,
who
he's
and
one
was
of 8.
carrying him on her
Okay.
back for
Yeah.
12 years.
That's right.
And those words are like ingrained in my brain,
Mhm.
that now I can rest, she said. Yeah, and see, now that's making me smile, right? Because it seems like the littlest of things, but it means everything, right? And when I'm thinking of that too, I'm thinking of something David said at our debrief in San Pedro, when he said, and maybe you remember this, when he's told the story about Marg.
Oh, I do remember.
Handing
yeah.
the
woman,
burners,
the stove lids.
handing them over, and she was
Yeah.
putting it in with such great
That's a
pride.
great story.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
tell us, just before we finish, a story that sticks out in your mind that sort of epitomizes, what it is that you do and makes you smile?
Well, the one that happens the most frequently to me, and it's also one of the strongest, is when I photograph most of the stoves, nearly all of them, as I don't, so other volunteers will photograph them, but all the stoves that we built get photographed. Because we make these thank you certificates that we give donors. It does 2 things for us, the photograph. It proves to us that our partners have really built the stoves with the money we've sent.
And built them properly.
And not in houses with thatch roofs or.
Right.
But the other thing is it gives us something to give back donors. So when someone donates a whole stove to the Stove Project, they receive a thank you certificate. And the thank you certificate shows the stove the family's received, with the family standing beside the stove, and it gives their name and ages. So it's become a big part of my trip each year. I mean, there's the first 2 weeks that I'm there with the volunteers. Sometimes I get there a week before preparing. And then I usually spend about 2 weeks after they leave going from house to house, photographing all the stoves that were built during the last year. This year, after you left, Rita and I photographed 216 stoves after you left.
And I know how hard that is, because I went in Comatancio, climbing up mountains and everything.
You and Liz photographed 50.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, when we're photographing stoves that the families have already had for 6 months or for a while, then they really know the difference that the stove makes. When you first build the stove, they're excited, but they don't really understand that they're not going to be in smoke all the time and that their health is going to get better. So quite often, women will come up, often with tears in their eyes, and they'll say, "Mi ojos," this means my eyes, no duele. My eyes don't hurt anymore. And that's just really special. This year again, another woman, a picture that Rita and I took, she was in tears of joy that she had a stove, and she was saying about how her daughter had all these problems with her eyes. She had a daughter who was about 14 years old, I think, and now her eyes were better. So it's hard for most Canadians to understand how awful it would be to live in that smoke every day, but all of these women, their eyes are bloodshot, their eyes ache all the time, and they also get headaches, well, their lungs as well.
Yeah.
And just to not have a splitting headache and eyes that ache every day in your home, it's so huge. And so I'm really the luckiest volunteer of all, because I get to hear from most of the families the results of the work. So that's my story.
Okay, that made me think of one more question about the volunteers that you bring. You don't bring the volunteers there. There's a lot of hotels. There's a lot of places that people could stay. But you don't bring them to a place that's, offers a luxury accommodations. Why is that?
Well, if we were to go back to $100 a night hotels, it would make the whole thing seem sort of phony after being in these villages where people are living on $1 or $2 a day and in these terrible conditions. And the place that we stay in Xela is pretty rough, but there is running water most of the time there. And there are toilets. They may be pretty dirty, but at least they exist. So it's a sort of midway position, I guess. But for most of the, for many of the volunteers anyway, it feels right not to be staying in too nice a place when you're working in those kind of
It's part of
conditions.
it's part of
Part
the
of the
experience.
Yeah, and I also tell volunteers before they go that there's a good chance you're going to get sick. A very high percentage of our volunteers do get sick every year, and that you're going to be working really hard, and it's dirty and tough conditions, and it is all of those things. And you could go on a week trip to Cuba or some tourist destination for probably less money than it costs for your airline ticket to go to Guatemala. But that's not what this trip's about. So you go there and you may get sick and you definitely get dirty and have long hard days, but when you come back you feel like you're a millionaire. When you go to Cuba for a week and get pampered in a hotel, you may have a nice soft week to relax in, but when you come back you don't feel like you've done anything for anybody, or that you've done anything to make a difference in Cuba or wherever you've been. In this one you do. You go back and you realize that you've changed people's lives and you're in the position where you can help more people.
Thank you, Tom, for giving that to me and for sharing that with all of us.
Thank you, Karen.